Ladies and gentlemen of the New Nation, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate that you're here. I know it looks very different. It's going to change, obviously, because I never stay in the same place more than a week or more than one episode. But before we get into the episode, I just want to say thank you to our partners who we're doing sponsorships with. The first of those being Heaven's Harvest. Guys, go to heavensharvest.com. Use our code GREAT to get 10% off of anything at checkout. What Heaven's Harvest is great at doing is they are great for preparing yourself from any emergency situation where your food is going to go bad and you need a backup source to survive, to have food for you and your family. They have great buckets of food that are ready and available and that are calorically dense for you and your family to have. They're not just little snacks, though they do make snacks, but they have full breakfasts, full lunches, full dinners. They taste great. They're great when, your electricity goes out, if you're involved in a tornado, hurricane, literally any natural disaster or terrorist attack. God forbid that there's a terrorist attack, but you need some food. They also have a really cool seed kit that you can order. You can plant your own food. You can grow your own food. And they also have different water filtration kits. Peruse the website. I really encourage it. heavensharvest.com. Use our code GREAT for 10% off at checkout. So thank you to Heaven's Harvest. We're also very happy to be partnered with Digital Homestead. Okay, guys, Digital Homestead is a website. It's a social media platform where you aren't inundated by the degeneration, the debauchery that you find on most social media platforms. Okay, it's a great way to share family photos, family videos, and just talk to members of your family, members of your members of your family, your friends, any close acquaintances. And if you don't want to be inundated with all the mess that Facebook shows you, that Twitter shows you, that Instagram shows you, use Digital Homestead. Okay. So go to digitalhomestead.app/thenewnation. Let them know that we sent you, and have a nice time on social media. Don't have a degenerate time. Have a nice time. Okay, in the studio with Jimmy Dore. Hey, Jimmy, thank you for coming. I really appreciate this.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You know nothing about me.
I don't know anything. I don't know. Let me actually swing this around a little bit more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, how about that?
That's good.
All right. It's a very deep couch, and so that's the problem.
It's about 1.5 feet deep, I'd say.
And if I sit back there, my back will start hurting. So I have to sit on the edge. And now it's like I'm upstaging him. So now I'm like, no, he's upstaging me.
I'm backstaging you, I think.
Upstage is when you...
Going back.
So now I have to turn my back to you. So you're that's called upstaging.
Okay. I did it on purpose. So okay, it's a strategic placement.
Okay, so go ahead. I'm going to still keep looking at the camera.
That one's yours if you want to look at the camera. You're used to that.
Well, that's what I have to. I have to do that in my studio a lot.
Mm-hmm. So, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I've been watching you for a while now. And for those of you guys who don't know who Jimmy is, Jimmy has a show on YouTube. Jimmy Dore. Is it just the Jimmy Dore Show, right?
That's it.
There it is. This guy has had Al Pacino call into the show. He's had George Clooney call into the show. Vince Vaughn.
Very popular.
These popular people, they call in and he talks to them like, there's buddies. And I think the first time I ever saw anything that you did, this will date me as a fan, but is when Al Pacino called in to talk about Dune.
Oh, no kidding. Boy, we've talked about so many things. That's Mike McRae he's really an amazing impressionist.
Wait, that wasn't Al Pacino?
That wasn't actually them. No, that's the beauty of, show business. That's the magic. Mike McRae, who's actually lives in Austin. He lived in, we met each other on the road. I think we worked together a couple of times, but anyway, it doesn't matter. He's great. And, he was featured on a CW. What was it? Remember the CW network? Remember that thing?
Yeah, it used to be the WB.
Yeah. And he was on Frank Caliendo's show that was on
yeah,
there.
sure.
And so, and then he does a lot of, anyway, so I'm glad you like those
my world
sketches. So those, I mean,
crumbled.
I always thought that those sketches that we do with Mike McRae would be the most popular videos. That's what I always thought. No, I always thought I was going to ride the coattails of those things. Mm-hmm. And for some reason there's a lot of people who caught on, right? So we get, I don't know, anywhere between 30 and 50,000 people watch those usually. And so they're catching on. It's growing. And so that's pretty good, I think. And some of them do really well, right? Some of them get a couple 100,000 views. But, it's like people are, even though my website, well, up until a couple of minutes ago was jimmydorcomedy.com, and I've had several Comedy Central specials and Hulu specials and all that. And people who know me through YouTube don't think of me as a comedian, I don't think, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
So when they come to my show, they're almost kind of, it's jarring a little bit to do comedy maybe sometimes the way, but I mean, that's why it's good to have Kurt Metzger on the show with me, who's an Emmy Award winning comedy writer with his own Comedy Central specials. And he's, so I'm really flattered and lucky to have Kurt working with me, because he works with the best. He is the best. So, I mean, he was writing, it was so funny. He was supposed to write for Chris Rock. But anyway, it's a funny story. I'll let him tell it. But he was supposed to write for Chris Rock when he got slapped.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and for somebody it slipped his mind or whatever. But that happens with people who are really highly artistic, stuff like that. So when that happened, somebody texted Kurt, like, hey, was that one of your jokes? Right?
Just to take
and
slap.
Kurt was like, what? He didn't even know. And they were like, oh, and he's like, oh, it's right. He wanted me to help write for that.
Jeez, imagine.
Anyway, I think that's a funny story. But, so yeah, I'm really lucky. And of course, Steph Zamorano, who everybody, it's fun when we go out on the road. She opens for me most of the time. And it's like she gets to surprise them, because people don't know she's a comedian either.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, and so she opens with about 15 minutes. And people go, oh, look, I didn't know. Yeah, so it's fun for us. I really just wanted to tour.
She's kind of like the Ed McMahon on your show. You hear the laugh off in the background. I love it.
Oh yeah. She does. It's yeah. And but anyway, so that's the roundup of the show. It's been great talking to you, and I'm gonna take off.
Yeah, great, thank you. But let's actually talk about something interesting. I wanted to ask you this.
Oh, can I get my drink?
Oh yeah, where did I put your drink somewhere? Oh. Look at that! I did here. We'll put it on this camera just in case while Jimmy's getting his drink. Now he's got his drink. But I can even ask this question now because he doesn't need headphones or anything like that. So Jimmy, let's do a little kind of like thought project here.
Sure.
The year's 2015. I traveled back in time. I meet you and I say, "Hey Jimmy, guess what? In about 8 years or so, you're going to be very, very well received by people on the right wing." Well, how would you respond to that?
I'll tell you what if we would have traveled back in time in 2015 and you would have asked me, hey, what are you thinking? I would have said, well, I was going over my life and my career. And I was like, well, I did it. I guess, I was getting ready to, my dad retired when he was 57, right? So I guess about, what 2015, that was 8 years ago. Yeah. So I was just about turning 50, right? Okay. And I was like, well, it all worked out for me. I had a good run. I had a couple of Comedy Central specials. Yep. Well, one of them won awards. And the reason why I tell you that, because if I don't, fucking nobody will. And and I got to headline the Improvs and all my favorite clubs and got on television and things like that. And I was like, but I never really sold tickets. I always sold handfuls of tickets, right? I never was really. And I was just like surprised. I was like, well, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Because when I did my hour special on Comedy Central in 2008, I was like, man, I was getting ready. I was like, I was picking out the theaters I was going to play. I just thought it was all going to happen, and it didn't. And I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. And it was a heartbreaker. I mean, isn't that funny? Like you have a huge victory and a success, and then it's wrapped in a heartbreak. Heartbreak. So that's when I got the radio show and started doing, anyway, that wasn't the question you asked me.
Well, you were in 2015, you would have been working for the Young Turks, right?
And so I was on the Young Turks, and that also didn't help sell. All I ever cared about was touring as a stand-up comedian.
Right.
And anything I did in show business was to do that. I think that's why I never became a successful actor, because I couldn't give a shit about acting. I don't enjoy it. I really enjoy stand-up comedy. And so I was just like, so this starting my own YouTube channel, it was just like, again, it's another effort to sell tickets.
Yeah.
And so I could go tour and do stand-up comedy. And I didn't know, it was immediate. Right away, it started selling tickets. Right, immediately. The power of YouTube is really amazing. And but the show took off. It was the perfect time. It was the Bernie Sanders time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had always been interested in politics. My 2008 Comedy Central special was entitled Citizen Jimmy, and it was all about politics. And they all tell you, don't talk about politics.
Yeah.
They all tell you, oh, I don't want you, splitting you won't be able to play the South. You won't be able to. Anyway, it all worked. It all worked out. And so the journey has been watching the people who I thought were bona fide lefties, to watch them drift to the right, or sometimes sprint, and me staying true to my values. And it turns out that I'm old enough to remember when My Body, My Choice, bodily autonomy was a left-wing thing.
Yep.
I'm old enough to remember when freedom of speech and anti-censorship was a left-wing position.
Yep.
And so now, if you have those things like that, or I remember when being anti-war was a left-wing position. So I've stayed where I am, and all those people who people identify as the left have all gone on to be war pigs and union busters.
Yep.
And lapdogs to power, and for the establishment and the corporate state. So it's been a really unique phenomena to watch. Whenever you get to the left of someone, the first thing they do is they smear you, right?
Yeah.
And they try to do character assassination, and they smear you, and then maybe they'll entertain your ideas and debate you. So that's what's been my journey the whole time, since I started my show in 2015. I think I started in December. Has been, I've been to the left of the Democratic Party and to the left of Hillary Clinton voters.
Right.
And so they used to call us children. They used to call us petulant. They used to call us crybabies. Then they called us selfish. Then they called us, we don't know how politics works. Then they said that we were misogynists, and then they said we were sexist, and then they said we were racist, and then they said we were violent, and then they said Russia was which is exactly what I told everybody at the Young Turks as they screamed Russiagate, which the Durham report has come out and totally debunks it, and it validates my position that it was a hoax. Russiagate was concocted by the DNC, the Hillary Clinton campaign, and the FBI.
And you've been saying that pretty much since the beginning.
I've been saying it since the beginning. It's such an easy, dumb conspiracy theory to debunk because there was never a shred of evidence.
Yeah.
It was never. They had to lie to the FISA court to get so what they did was the FBI, and this guy's been convicted of this. Lying to the FISA court, which is the special terrorism court, which you don't get to hear from the defense. It's just you hear from, and that's why it's super secret, because we're fighting terror. And they use that. They lied to get a warrant on Carter Page, on a guy working for the Trump campaign. And so people don't know this. There's a 2-hop rule. Meaning, so if they got a FISA warrant on Carter Page, they get to now listen in on the phone calls of not only him, but everyone he talks to and everyone they talk to.
Really?
It's called the 2-hop rule. So when Trump said they're spying on me, Obama's spying on me, my campaign, he was right.
He was right.
They had a license to tap all their phones, and they still couldn't convict him of a crime.
That's insane.
And so I knew from the beginning that it wasn't, the whole idea was that the Russians hacked into the DNC server, and that was somehow in collusion in conspiracy with Donald Trump and WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. Well, none of that was never true. None of it was. And so anyway, I got that right. And by the way, I got it right with a guy named Aaron Mate. So
yes, he's a frequent co-host of your show, or fills in for you.
He's a frequent guest host. He works at the Gray Zone, and he does his own thing. He works at Democracy Now! For 10 years, and then he went out on his own, and he's winning awards. In fact, he won an award for his he won the ISI, the IF Stone Independent Journalism Award, went to him for his meticulous debunking of the Russiagate conspiracy theory. And he said he shares that award with my show because we were the only ones out there doing that.
Yeah.
Everyone else was just repeating breathlessly the BS conspiracy theory concocted by the CIA. They do it all the time. And so those people then started calling me, oh, you're right wing because you're defending Donald Trump.
Right.
No, I'm not defending Donald Trump. I'm pointing out that if it wasn't Donald Trump, if it was Bernie Sanders, they'd be doing the exact same thing.
You're just calling out corruption.
That is exactly
regardless
right.
of party.
And the best way to undermine democracy, as Noam Chomsky taught us, is by distraction.
Yeah.
And that's what Russiagate was. It was a nonstop distraction at the top of the establishment's lungs for going on 8 years now.
Yeah. I think people get the bad taste in their mouth because they see maybe people like you kind of like shaking hands with people on the right and saying, oh, look, now he's one of them. He's doing he's pretty much parroting those kind of talking points, but he's the only guy on the left who's doing it. So you kind of puts like a target on your back, right?
Sure it does. Yeah.
Because you've been censored on YouTube, I imagine.
Yeah, I was censored over COVID.
Can we say COVID now? We can talk about that stuff now.
YouTube?
I think the rules have laxed up, or
I don't know. Plenty of people have gotten strikes having me on their show. I'll tell you that.
Well, we've had a couple of people that we haven't gotten strikes yet. There's actually a couple of people that you've talked about that we've had on our show. It hasn't happened yet.
Isn't it amazing? It's not the YouTubers who are spreading misinformation that's dangerous. Who is doing it? Oh, it's the government, the FDA, the CDC, a big pharma corporations, and their bought media. And it wasn't YouTubers. And what were they lying about? So when I was all rah-rah. I was as scared as anybody they scared the hell out of me.
Well, you were injured.
So,
I remember.
well, I mean, up until then, right? So I was just like, I didn't know. I had blind faith in science, which is what people want you to have. When they say trust science, that's not what you don't trust science. That's not how science works. Science works by questioning.
Religion, constantly. Yes.
That's right. They were treating science as a religion, and they were telling you to have blind faith.
Right.
That's not science. In fact, I saw comedians. It was such a heartbreaker to see comedians who I always was proud to be in the comedic profession, but so many of my favorite ones let me down around COVID. Anyway, one of them actually, I saw him do a joke when he said, my brother doesn't want to take the vaccine because he doesn't know what's in it. And he's like, yeah, you're a moron. These guys are scientists. Trust the science. I have to trust the science that my zipper works. So when I go to the Starbucks, my slong isn't hanging out. And I'm like, well, you don't have to trust.
Right.
You could just look.
You could just look down.
You could just look. You
don't know what's in it.
You don't have to go to the goddamn Starbucks with your fingers crossed. I hope my dick's not out.
Right.
You could just look. So this idea to have blind faith, that it's the odd people, and people cheer that as if that's smart.
100%.
He's shaming someone for not having blind faith in science, which is the opposite of science. So anyway, I don't know how we got on this, but a lot of people
censorship.
So yeah, I got censored for telling the truth. Of course, that's the only thing you ever get censored for. I got censored for saying that the doesn't stop contraction.
We called it the Crenshaw.
Okay,
to get around that.
Yeah, so I just call it the. And so I said that the doesn't stop transmission or contraction, which I figured out. I figured out before in the European Union, they had a Pfizer executive. The head of Pfizer refused to testify in front of the European Parliament. So he sent like an underling, a vice president, and she was asked point blank by a member of the European Parliament, can we see the data? Did you test for the vaccine stopping transmission? And she laughed and said, no, of course we didn't. So that means that that Fauci knew that.
Right.
That Collins knew that. That everybody knew that. And yet they didn't say it. They didn't say. They kept saying that the stops.
Yeah.
And that and that you can't be used if the virus can't. And it was like, so I would say so. When I got vaccine injured,
Yeah.
I just, there's no government program. Hey, if you get vaccine injured, call this number and we'll tell you what to do.
Right.
There's nothing. And so I just tweeted out, hey, I'm sick ever since I got my vaccine, I've been sick and really sick and I don't know what to do. And so luckily there was this doctor who follows me on Twitter, Dr. Yogandra, and he was leading a study trying to get a protocol on how to treat people who had long COVID.
Right.
And they had a theory that people who got vaccine injured would present as if they had long COVID, that the spike protein was doing to me whatever it was doing to people who got long COVID. And so I had to get these special blood tests and whatever and go to this special place. And he showed me, he goes, I'm going to show you that you present biologically exactly as someone who's had long COVID, but you never had COVID, so this has to be from the vax. Or you want to edit that out?
That's fine. No, I'll let it go.
And so he then started me on a protocol. Mm-hmm. And the protocol, because they didn't know what worked, they were testing things to see what did work. Fluvoxamine was one of the things they gave me. That's been proven in tests to work now. And they gave me, now I can't even, azithromycin I was on.
Any hydroxychloroquine?
But they did give me the horse dewormer.
Oh, they did. Oh, you did get the horse dewormer.
And so when they gave me that, they gave me ivermectin, and I go, hey, I thought this is that horse. I'm not supposed to take that. Yeah. And they go, Jimmy, that's the ivermectin was considered a wonder drug before COVID. It worked so well. He told me it won the Nobel Prize, that it's on the WHO list of essential medicines, and he told me that it's been prescribed for billions of people. It saved billions of lives. It's safer than Tylenol.
How is El Salvador doing a better job than we were?
And Africa. And I said, why would they lie then if it could maybe treat it, right? Yeah. You could say that. You can say that on YouTube. It could maybe. But we're not saying it does at all. That's not what we're saying. We're saying back then, why he told me that the reason why they had to demonize it like that was because if it could treat COVID-19, we're not saying that it does. It could treat that, they couldn't get their emergency use authorization for the vaccine. If there was an early treatment, and
a cheaper treatment,
and of course nobody could make money off that. People go, well, even the manufacturer of it. No, there's nobody who owns the patent anymore. Right. They go, oh, Merck even said it doesn't treat it. Yeah, because Merck doesn't make money off it anymore. Anybody could produce it, and it's cheap. It's like 2 cents a pill or something like that. So and if you know anything about Fauci, he's a complete criminal. He was a criminal during the AIDS crisis, and he's a criminal now. And they invented this virus in a biolab in Wuhan, and he lied about funding it twice to Congress. He should be in prison over that alone. Mm-hmm. He's not. He was the highest paid person in the government at over $400,000.
Who was never voted in, right?
Who was never voted in. He was the longest serving. And why? Because he served Big Pharma and the military-industrial complex. He was put in charge of the bioweapons in 2002 after 9/11. Oh. And so and then they had a couple escapes of this gain-of-function viruses in America, and that's why they had to ship them over to China to keep doing it. Yeah. So,
really? They had a couple
and Obama put a stop to this, and they had to go around him. They did it through a secondary, it's called Echo Health Alliance. Then they got money from them, and then they funded the Wuhan, and then they lied about it. And then he lied about it. And no one cares that he lied about it. Fauci is a bigger liar about COVID than Trump ever was. And I'm no Trump fan. That's another thing people have to understand. But people have to understand that whatever they're doing to Trump, they would be doing to Bernie Sanders or any independent candidate or anybody who happened to rise to power outside the system, which is what Trump did. Trump ran against the Republican Party inside the Republican Party, which is what Bernie did the first time he ran and never did it again, which Chris Hedges predicted. He goes, he'll never do that again. And he didn't. He ran as Trump is the most corrupt president in the history of our country, and with racism and this. It's just he turned into.
That's a pretty good impression that you did there. That's a pretty good one.
Thank you. Right back at you. But he turned into a garbage politician who just serves empire, and so people think that somehow they. And by the way, the trick of the establishment is to keep us pretending that there is a big difference between the Democrats and Republicans. There isn't. It doesn't matter who was president, Republican or Democrat. They were going to crush that railroad union strike. Doesn't matter who's president. They're going to send $100 billion to Ukraine. So just like when Joe Biden, people are patting him on the back for getting us out of Afghanistan. I'm like, no. They go, Jimmy, don't you want to give him kudos for? I want to see what he's going to do with the money that they were spending in Afghanistan. And the only reason they're going to let him to get out of this Afghanistan war is because the military-industrial complex got another war coming down the pike, and a son of a bitch, they did. And they had a plan to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline before Putin ever invaded Ukraine. So anyway, me staying anti-war and me telling the truth about the corruption in both parties and both, Ralph Nader said the only difference between a Democrat and a Republican is the speed in which their knee hits the floor when a donor enters the room. So that's what people, and so we were there with the Bernie movement was there, but then they scared the hell out of Bernie that they were going to blame him for Donald Trump. And ever since then, he's been a good boy. He doesn't criticize the Democrats or Joe Biden, and he stands by as Joe Biden doesn't fulfill one of his promises, like a minimum wage or health care or a public option. Has
he voted pro giving money to Ukraine? Bernie has.
Yes.
Oh, he has. Really? Oh, wow.
They're all war pigs.
They all have like AOC.
They're all war pigs.
Yeah.
They're all war pigs. They all voted. I don't know if it was the Democrats who crushed that union strike and Joe Biden.
I saw Bernie. This was about a month ago. I saw Bernie. I flew to Vermont, and when I sat, down in Vermont, I said, "Wow, I hope I see Bernie just kind of walking around." I'm flying out of Vermont. Guess who comes off the plane coming into Vermont? Bernie Sanders.
Did you ask him anything?
No. I looked up. I saw him walk by me, and someone behind me says, "Thanks, Bernie."
You go, why are you a war pig?
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
That's what I would say. Why are you a war pig?
Fly's coach.
Oh, he's such a gentleman.
Can I tell you a personal story?
He's a chump.
I want to get your.
He's a chump for empire.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt it. I want to get your rating on how crazy this is on a scale of 1 to 10.
And so, what do you think when you hear people say that I'm right wing? What does that make someone like you think? Like, holy shit! If I
someone like me who is like extremely right wing, I say he's not. He's not. He's clearly not. Right-wing? But he's not. Yeah.
Is that what you are? You're right wing.
Yeah.
What makes you right wing?
That's not, right. Like, I mean, Thomas knows. Thomas watches the show, but I don't even consider myself really in any party anymore. But I think right wing when it comes down to, let's just say, Second Amendment.
You're pro gun.
Pro gun.
Okay.
I'm not pro life. I'm
I'm
an abortion abolitionist.
Here's the only pro gun argument I ever heard that made sense.
Okay.
Because I'm for getting rid of guns. We're the only country that has these mass shootings, and I think it's because we have so much. And they're not like other countries have guns, but they're heavily licensed and stuff like that. And you have to, it's like driving a car. You have to go pass a test and shit. And so there's a little bit, and you should be able to trace bullets, stuff like that, at least. Anyway, but someone said I had this guy, my Boogaloo Boy, on my show. Oh
yeah.
Which boy, people lost their shit over that.
I remember you talking about that. They didn't like that.
They didn't like that, and he told me that by the way, he wasn't. He was barely right wing. He was
the Boogaloos were all like center left.
He was
left.
He was pro gun. That was the only real right wing position he had.
Right.
And the reason why he said he was pro gun, he said that there were some people came at him, and they were I don't know if they were breaking into his apartment or whatever, and he called the cops. And the
45 minutes later.
Cops showed up 45 minutes later. And he said, now you know why people have guns. And well, I had a similar thing happen to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a guy show up at my old house where I used to live. And because my old address was freely available, I think you just register to vote. People can get your...
Oh, really?
And I think... So, but anyway, people had it, and because I never thought I wasn't famous, and nobody gave a shit where I lived, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden, people show up, and I got a phone call one day, from Joe Rogan's security saying, "Hey, there's a crazy guy on his way over to your house. You should call the cops. He might be armed."
And this was from the old house or the new?
At the old house.
Oh, okay.
And they told me what he was driving, and so I was like, really? I'm like, come on. I look out the window and there was the truck, and I was like, oh no. So I call the cops. Cops don't show up for an hour.
Yeah. And what are you doing?
This is in Pasadena. This is right.
Like in the bathroom.
What?
In your own house.
I don't have an alley.
Right.
I can't get out. Yeah. So you could see. No, I still don't own a gun because the statistics are I'm going to use it on someone I know. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why. And believe me, the last thing I need is to have a gun.
You could do what Biden said. You just get that pump shotgun. You walk out onto your porch. You pump it. You shoot it out into the air. That should scare anybody off.
Do you ever see those guys who try to kill themselves with a shotgun? Right, try to commit suicide.
Kurt Cobain.
And then they blow the chin off, and then they live.
Oh, really?
You ever see those guys?
No.
Phil Donahue used to have them on when I was a kid. I go, oh my God!
Like
man.
their bottom jaw is missing.
Yeah, so they put the gun underneath, and when they go to reach to pull the trigger, their head goes up, and then it just blows their chin off.
Sounds like Darwinism to me.
Oh my God. Then they live and they become Christian and they're happy. And then they go talk to school kids. Hey kids, you want to see the kid with the guy with the face blown off? You want to have nightmares forever?
Don't touch guns, kids.
So, but I don't think, our country's completely corrupt, which is why we're the only, but what, so that's what, so guns and then abortion, you're against abortion?
Abortion abolitionist.
When you say abolition, what do you mean?
I feel like it should be abolished like slavery of old.
So abolished in a sense that, what if it's the mother's going to die before what if it's a medical necessary kind of procedure, right?
I feel like, and this is the position,
because those exist,
right? They exist, and I feel like when those things happen, when it's the life of a mother, I feel like doctors do try to save both, right? They try to go save the baby, they try to save the mother,
right?
And if one of those people happens to die in the process, that's just sad, and then all we can do is really try and be there for the person who either survived, for the person we help mourn their loss. I don't think doctors say, okay, this woman's going to die. Let's go in there and just kill the baby, because that could ultimately end up killing the woman as well. So I think they go there into that type of situation with the intent to save both lives. And if it doesn't happen, it's just a sad situation. I've also given a very extreme response to people who have flipped it onto me and said, well, they know I have a daughter. They say, well, what happens if your daughter was raped? What would you do then? And then I would say, well, I would advocate for the life of my grandchild and I would seek justice for my daughter. And if I'm consistent, I have to say that, right? I can't say, well, in that case, I let it go.
Yeah, so I agree that it's way messier than people try to make it out to be. The way I come down on it, and maybe this is morally cowardly of me, but I go with my body, my bodily autonomy, my body, my choice, and I don't want a G-man coming in between my doctor and my health care.
Yeah.
And so that's how so that has to be a bit of a contradiction for you, right? Because you don't want the government coming in between a doctor and a patient, right?
A little bit, and I've always had
it's a little bit,
only because
it's a big. That's a big contradiction.
The big fundamental, the foundation of the argument is when you're talking to someone is, do you agree that it's a human life at the moment of conception, right? Like, and that's where a lot of the big back and forth starts it, because some people don't think it is, some people think it is. So with the people that think it is, you say, okay, well, at any stage, it is not then a part of the woman's body. It's another body growing inside her body. So also, that we don't necessarily have 100% autonomy over our own bodies from the government, right? A lot of people
you can't do dope and stuff like that, right?
Right. And that,
also is garbage.
Yeah,
law.
That argument has been applied to, like, we don't have bodily autonomy over our bodies. Stop using that argument. It's for the people that stand with the idea that it's not a human life. They probably have the best argument to support abortion, because they fundamentally don't believe that it's a human life. But the ones who are kind of on the fence, or that say, yeah, it is a human life at the moment of conception, and it is a part of the woman's body, it's not her body. It's not like her organ. It's a separate human body growing inside of her own. That's when I think you have a little bit more pushback from people, because they don't know where to stand, because they'll say at 4 or 5 months, yeah, I don't know. And I think it's because you get the image of, you see a head and you see hands and you see feet. And it's very hard to think of a human being as being a very, very small embryo. And my perspective is a religious one, because I am a zealot, is that I believe that we all have souls from the moment of conception.
Well, yeah, I mean,
You're second guessing coming onto the show now.
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
No, I think it's and so I mean, the point of my show is that you're not my enemy.
You're not mine either.
And that we share a common enemy, and and me, it's the establishment. And look just how they handled COVID when they passed the CARES Act. They put $5 trillion into the economy, and they didn't go in your pocket.
No.
It didn't go into workers' pockets.
I don't think so.
It went into the richest 1,000 people. And where did they put that money? They put it in their pocket, and then they put it into the stock market, and their stocks went. I mean, it was the whole.
Do you want to hear how they treated a worker?
Let
me tell you this.
Okay.
So my wife she used to work for a company, one of the biggest nonprofit animal welfare companies. Remember Sarah McLachlan singing those songs to make you cry? That company. I'll name them, the ASPCA. She was working in Tennessee. We moved down. We live in Nashville. Working in Tennessee, their office is in New York. The only time she ever has any interaction with any employee or superior is over Zoom or on the phone. January comes along. You got to take this vaccine. Company-wide policy. She says, I work 700 miles away. I don't have any interaction with anybody in the office. I don't come into the office. Also, I just gave birth and I'm breastfeeding. There's no data on what this vaccine does to breastfeeding mothers. I don't want to pass that through the breast milk. They say, okay, you don't want to take it? You sure? She says, yes. She says, okay, you're effectively resigning from your position. She says, what? But I'm not resigning. Not only that, a month later, guess what kind of outbreak happens at the office while everyone's vaxxed and boosted?
COVID, sure.
Now tell me, does that make any sense to you?
No, it still doesn't. They still make you get vaccinated to work on a movie set, I think.
Wait, even still now?
Even now.
After all the restrictions have come down and everything?
I'm pretty sure because, it's the stars that control the set, right? And but anyway,
the actors make the movie.
Yeah. So, but none of it made sense. There was none of it. So as soon as I figured out that the didn't stop transmission or contraction, was because the countries that I was seeing had the biggest uptake of the, they were having the biggest outbreaks. And I'm like, well, obviously this doesn't. And so then you saw people who had gotten it, and they were also, and then they started to call them breakthrough. And it's what? You mean, also, they were called breakthrough cases, also known as cases.
Yes.
You don't have to put breakthrough in front of
it. What about shedding? Did you talk much about shedding?
And so you could, they had just as much viral load. Mm-hmm. And so if you were vaxxed and you got COVID, mm-hmm. you could still shed it, meaning you could still transmit it.
Right.
And you could, and it just, you might have, the data was that you might be, for a shorter time, you would be infectious.
Right.
But Andy Slavitt, which was Joe Biden's czar or director of COVID response, he said in June of 2021 that everyone's going to get COVID. So if everyone's going to get COVID, then who do you care? So who do you care who you get it from? Right. If you get it from a vaccinated person, which you could, or an unvaccinated person?
I'm pretty sure I got it from vax people.
So but people wouldn't accept that, even though I would show them that Andy Slavitt, Joe Biden's director of COVID response, said on Twitter that everyone is going to get COVID because this is back when it was Delta.
Yeah.
That it's so contagious. So I knew this. I had already had on Dr. Robert Malone, mm-hmm. who has many patents on vaccines, has spent his whole life working on vaccines, worked at the Salk Institute. He's Mr. Vaccine. They tried to discredit him because he had a counter narrative mm-hmm. to what they were saying. He came on my show and he explained to me that even if everybody got vaccinated, we would still have this virus. It's never going away, right, because this is what they call a leaky vaccine, meaning that if you can still get the you can still get the virus and you can still will transmit it if you get vaccinated. It's called leaky. And if you over-vaccinate, you create a thing called immune escape, which is when you can create a more virulent strain of the virus. And that happens inside the vaccinated. They were telling people the exact opposite, that it was the unvaccinated people that were making the virus mutate and that they were the ones going to make us have worse outcome. It was all, and then when they said it was a pandemic of the that was always a lie. His director of COVID response had already said everybody's gonna get it.
Right.
So once everybody's gonna get it, there's no sense for mandates anymore. Yeah. If everybody's going to get it, why do you care if you get it from a vaccinated or an unvaccinated person? And the only reason you would ever take that vaccine is because it would lessen your symptoms personally, not because for the community, because there's no such thing as herd immunity against this thing. No, it's always going to be, it's endemic, meaning it's going to circulate forever.
Well, the best thing to do is you just get it, right? You just get it. And then you have resistance to it for a lot longer than you would if you would have gotten the Crenshaw, right? I mean,
well, the big lie is that it was, that they made us over afraid of it. They made us think that people like me and you were a threat to dying from it, and we never were.
We were killing
it has a infection fatality rate of 0.2%. And that's what we shut the world down over, something with a 99.8% survivability rate. The average age of death from COVID, 82 years old. The average life expectancy of an American is 77.
Yeah.
So this should have been handled the way the people at the Great Barrington Declaration said it should be handled, which was the way that everyone had always agreed to handle pandemics. That you go after the most vulnerable and you target them and you try to protect them, like the old elderly, and the same people who are at risk from the flu, right? And so this was nothing but corporate capture, and then the big pharma capture of our corporate media. So they had the perfect propaganda, and they had the people in the government working for them too, and they're all on the take. And that this is the government you get from crony capitalism, and here we are. Fantastic.
Not a fan of capitalism either. I've had a bit of a transformation. So you're like, what kind of right wing guy?
Well, you're not a right winger,
right? Well, I feel that I feel like free markets are a good thing. I feel capitalism as it exists today is too fixated on greed. It's fixated on making more money as much as you can at the expense of people who we should really be trying to help anyway and contribute to society.
Well,
what kind of
an economic theory does a country employ that we did in the last 30 years? We'll give you a tax break if you take a good paying job, turn it into a shitty paying job, and then ship it to a slave in China. You'll get a tax break, and that's supposed to help our economy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
No, that means that the guy who owns that manufacturing the manufacturer, he owns that politician who makes that law, and then he sends the job. So he's just hollowing out America. It's the hollowing out of America, which is what we did to ourselves, which is why it's hilarious that they want to go to war with China. China makes everything we frickin' use here. We don't make anything, which we found out during the pandemic, which is why we had a supply chain back up, because we outsourced all our jobs.
Everything.
That's right.
People were wanting Ford Broncos and they had to wait because the plant in Ukraine blew up and they were waiting for some part that got made over there. Like, why are we making Ford Broncos in Ukraine? That's besides the point. Something that I wanted to ask you that a lot of people wanted me to ask you, especially that watch our show, saying, we know Jimmy supports, what is it? I don't want to say free healthcare, but
Medicare for all. Yeah.
Do you
so like
have
the same
any
Medicare
reservations now, though, based on how the government handled COVID?
So people say that a lot. The way COVID was handled by the corporation who owns your government, right? We did exactly what Big Pharma did, what Pfizer wanted us to do. That's what we did, and the media owned by the same people who are in bed with the CIA. It's one big corrupt cabal. We don't have a government. I talk about it on my show that our government isn't like, people think of it as being regular corrupt. Like, oh, Joe Biden got his kid a job on an energy board he didn't have to show up for, 80 grand because he was in chair. So yeah, and so or Donald Trump got his son-in-law hooked up with the Saudi Arabians, and that's not everything The entire Ukraine war is 100% corruption. The Afghan war was 100% corruption. Syria, Libya, Iraq, 100%. It was never for our security. It was always to put it's war is a racket, just like Smedley Butler said. And so that's where we are. So right now we have big pharma and insurance companies writing the laws that we have to live under and get health care, which is why if you get seriously ill, you'll probably go bankrupt. Or if you have a kid who gets seriously ill in a unique way, probably go bankrupt. I had great health insurance and I was fully employed, worked my whole life. And in 2006 and 7, I got uniquely sick with a bone disease they couldn't diagnose. I went bankrupt, meaning I had to take out a second mortgage to pay bills, stuff like that. And I had insurance. Of course I did. And so anyway, so right now, if my doctor wants to treat me, it has to go to a guy at a health insurance company or big pharma and all that, and they decide. So someone who never met me, they have a doctor who never met me. He's going to decide what treatment. So why am I even going to my doctor? Right. And this is all, it's crazy, right? And so, and it's all this extra paperwork and all this stuff, and it's only for profit. And so I want to take a capitalist out from in between me and my doctor, and at least I can vote the G-man in or out, right? Right. So at least I can do that. At least I take the capitalist out. At least I lessen the incentive of the government to extract wealth from me in that transaction. Yeah. And if you, Medicare is only as good as the people who run it, and the law is written to run it. Right. But it, up until I know up until recently, it was always by far, according to surveys, the most popular health care program in the country is Medicare. People can't, I mean, famously when John Podesta's emails got revealed, it showed that, leaked that it showed that when he turned 65, he's like, I made it. I'm on Medicare. Like everybody, so those are the people at the top of government. Yeah. They're like, oh, they know what it's like to not have to worry about those kind of medical bills and stuff like that. Yeah. And so, but we have to make it better. And they're always trying to privatize it, which is what Medicare Part D is. And Joe Biden is just like whoever the Republican, it's no better. He's just, again, they all work for the same people. So that's my argument for Medicare for all after COVID is the reason why COVID went down wasn't because of government. It was because the people at Big Pharma own those people in the government. And so you want to just give it. So at least I have a chance to vote those people out. I can't vote out Big Pharma, but I could try to take their influence out of those people. Yeah. And that's what we have to do.
Is there a country somewhat close to our size that does it better as far as healthcare?
I think every country. Well, we're aren't we like 38th or something like that? I would say every country above us. Yeah. It's just, on that list.
Is there any country that, because when you take into consideration the United States as far as like as diverse as it is, and as populous, as far as its population, people talk about like the Nordic countries and things like that, as other European countries which are smaller in population, and just the culture is completely different.
Right.
I just wonder how because did you grow up Catholic, or you come from a Catholic?
No, Catholic. I grew up Catholic.
So it's like when I think of Catholic, especially when it comes to medicine, I always hear of Catholic hospitals, Catholic charity. Yeah. I really wish that communities, especially of Catholics or of other religions. I know there are people that have religious insurance, like groups of Christians will have insurance amongst like their own congregation and things like that. I don't know how well that does, but like you're saying, can't we just start to take care of each other better? Can't we try to tell each other, hey, I'd like you to be in shape. I'd like you to be healthy. I heard that 70% of people who died from COVID could have avoided it if they had more vitamin D in their body.
That's right.
Why aren't they encouraged? El Salvador would send vitamin C, vitamin D, hydroxychloroquine, and a couple of steroids to people when they came down with COVID. The U.S. didn't do that. The U.S. said, go get a vaccine. Here's a Shake Shack burger.
That's right. I'm guessing there's not much money in vitamin D.
There probably isn't. You and I could come out with our own vitamin D supplement.
Yeah, I'm sure anybody can make vitamin D, I'm sure, right? So there can't be much money in it.
Do you know how to make it?
I'm sure I could Google it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We can call it Mike and
Jimmy's
vitamin D.
I make it every day when I go out and sit in the sun.
That's right.
You make your own vitamin D.
Do you put your bare feet in the grass?
I have. So my backyard, my old backyard, I had a patch of grass. Okay. But my new backyard, I have artificial turf. Can you believe it? Because
I can believe it. Yeah.
Because it's in shadow. half of it is in shadow all day.
It'd be brown most of the time.
And so, yeah, it would be. So we just have a couple, but we have plants everywhere and trees, and
good.
we have lots of green foliage and stuff.
Do you ever want to move out of California?
Yeah, when I went to,
You were in Nashville recently.
I was in I was in Fort Lauderdale recently, and I was at this guy's house. I was doing that Patrick Bet David's.
Oh yeah, the show, PBD.
So he was nice enough to invite me to his house, and ever since then, I really wanted to live there.
In Florida,
where he lives.
Oh,
it's really nice. He lives.
Jimmy
He lives on the water. I always want to live like on a canal. He doesn't live on the ocean. He lives on like a canal that goes out to the ocean, which is what I love that. And
he's got a dock.
Yeah. And so anyway, that's the only. I mean, I'd like to live. I never lived in. I like cities.
Yeah.
So I moved from Chicago to Los Angeles, and most comedians would go to New York first, and then you go to Los Angeles. I skipped because for myriad reasons, I came right to Los Angeles, and I always regretted that. I wish I would have spent a couple of years in New York, at least maybe 4 or 5.
You've got a very New York attitude. I think you would have fit right in.
Oh, that's what people always said. That's funny. People think I'm from New York, but I'm from Chicago.
I'm from New York. I thought you were from New York.
What part of New York are you
Long
from?
Island.
Oh, okay.
You can't hear it?
Yeah, I can hear it now.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, I really, really love Manhattan. I love Chicago too. It's so funny. People like, oh, you're in Chicago. You're gonna, it's violent. It's like, it's one of the cleanest cities in the. I don't know where. It's like just like when I was in Mexico City, people are like, oh, it's like in Los Angeles, right?
Right.
It's like, yeah, I don't go where the crime.
Right, exactly.
I don't go.
You're not taking Sunday strolls through the south side of Chicago.
That's right.
Right.
So,
though the things that happen there probably shouldn't be kind of glossed over. You probably have to pay attention to them a little bit. But did you ever really talk about? You didn't really talk too much about Lori Lightfoot on your show that much. You didn't really go too deep into Chicago.
Yeah, politics. I don't really go into. I have these guys on from Hardlens Media, Kit Cabello and Daniel Luckner, and they do a great show. Hardland Media, and I have them come on whenever something big in Chicago happens. Like they had another mayor's elected, another supposed progressive. It's not going to. I wish them the best.
That's what you can do.
I wish them the best, but they don't. None of them have big ideas. The problem, you have to come in with a big idea, and you have to put all your political capital behind it, and then you have to cross your fingers and do everything you can to make sure your idea works. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't have any big ideas.
Did you ever hear of Larry Sharpe when he was running for governor of New York?
No.
Really, really interesting libertarian.
I'm not looking. It's just my neck started to hurt.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's why I started just to look forward. So I'm not being rude.
That's fine. No, it's not being rude. And let me know when you want to run out of here. Just get up and go.
Oh, okay. Let me see. What time is it?
I think it's 12:05.
Oh, okay.
He's got to get up and go pretty soon, but it just blew by really quick.
Oh, it really did.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Okay, yeah, I have a 12:15. I can go maybe 5 more minutes.
Maybe 5 more minutes.
Okay.
I heard something about a comedian was saying that Chicago is the only place where fat people run things efficiently. Fat politicians or something, or like the fat heads of unions. Do you have?
Well, they call it the city that works.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. What's going on with this writer's strike? You're deep in the middle of LA.
I remember.
Do you pay much attention?
I remember when a black guy got elected the mayor of Chicago because there was two white people, 2 Irish people running against each other. That's a nice sound, right?
That should be good. Yeah.
Anyway, he got it, and everybody in my neighborhood, which was white, they were all afraid, like, oh, they're gonna take over, stuff like that. You hear people say stuff like that, and they're gonna, oh boy, everybody's gonna have to move out of Chicago. And a couple of years of under Harold Washington, and to their credit, those same people who were afraid, because they're always afraid of the unknown. They didn't. Mm-hmm. They're afraid of black people. They're afraid of a black mayor. To their credit, a lot of them, if not most, came around to like, hey, the snow got plowed. The streets got cleaned.
Imagine that.
The garbage got picked up.
Yeah.
The schools ran. I mean, they were like, yeah, everything. They got afraid, but things actually worked out, and they would give them credit.
It's when corporate shills come in and mess everything up.
So I think people just, everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants their government to deliver basic services and infrastructure and a sense of fairness, and to provide things that they can't provide individually. And right now, healthcare in America is the worst. You get the worst results for the most money. We pay twice as much as anybody, and so we got to try. I just want the same healthcare as my. Well, I used to say my grandma, but now how about my parents? They're both dead now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they were. My dad was 93 by the time, so they were all very old.
93. Well, God bless him.
Yeah, my dad retired when he was my age, so that's how. Yeah, I know, right? It makes me think, holy shit. So. But anyway, it was
Jimmy. Thank you
great
for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Taking the time, guys. Give it up for Jimmy Dore. He has a show pretty much every day, streaming live on YouTube.
No, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays usually.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He also has dates that he tours. We'll throw that up in the description of this video. Hopefully, you don't get a strike. I think Jimmy, like I said, he's not my enemy. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you, pal.
Got it. Out of the way for you.
Okay.
I step on that. Thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate it. It bounces forward, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, man. It was great. Nice to meet you.